Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. The Sensex and the Nifty hit a record high in trade yet again, gaining for the 7th straight session. Financial stocks see some profit booking, even as ICT stocks bounce back in trade. The 3-day meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee kicks off. The CNBC-TV18 Citizens MPC votes unanimously for a status quo policy, also expects the RBI to sound hawkish. The government seeks Lok Sabha's go-ahead for a net additional spending of over 58,000 crore rupees this fiscal. Defence services account for 25% of the additional spend. Fertilizer subsidy accounts for 22%. The Supreme Court upholds the doctrine of group of companies, rules that arbitration agreements can bind non-signatories as well, adds that arbitral tribunals should be free to decide which non-signatory party can be bound. 10 BJP MPs who recently won the state assembly elections resigned from parliament. This includes Union Agriculture Minister Narendra Singh Tomar and Minister of State for Food Processing Prahlad Patel, sparking speculation about a potential cabinet reshuffle. Israel bombs southern and central Gaza. US President Biden condemns reports of rape of Israeli women and girls by Hamas militants. Prime Minister Netanyahu says the Israeli army will enforce Gaza demilitarization after the war ends. Schools and colleges remain shut in Chennai today and tomorrow as parts of the city remain waterlogged. Foxconn resumes iPhone manufacturing, but operations at auto factories and IT companies continue to be impacted. Tensions run high in Rajasthan a day after the daylight murder of Rajput leader Sukhdev Singh Gogamedi. Shops and businesses along with schools are shut across Jaipur and several cities after a Bandh call. The world's largest iceberg, 3 times the size of New York City, is drifting away from the Antarctica. Meanwhile, the World Met Organization says $10 billion were lost due to extreme weather events in 2022 at the COP28 Climate Summit. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is the highest-ranked Indian in the Forbes list of the 100 most powerful women in the world. HCL Tech's Roshni Nadar, Sales Soma Mandal and Biocon's Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw also make it to the list. Well, let's start with the market action. The Wall Street touching new highs but ended off the intraday peak. The Nifty and the Sensex gaining 0.5% ended in the green for the 7th straight day. The broader markets mildly underperformed the blue chips. Let's take a look at the Nifty, 82 points higher, 20,937. That's where it closed for the day. The Nifty Bank closing in the red, down by about 170 points. The Nifty Auto flat but with a red tick, and the Nifty IT index higher by about 500 odd points. The bulls clearly charging ahead there on the back of the IT stocks. Nigel is standing by with the market action. Nigel, so coming off their intraday highs today, but new records nevertheless.
Well, it was another good trading session for the Indian markets. The Nifty went ahead and registered its 7th straight session that it ended higher. The dips got bought into on the Nifty. The Nifty Bank, though, was a little bit off color. So that took a bit of a break. But you had IT names, ITC, as well as L&T. They made up for the weakness that we saw on the Nifty Bank. So the winners today, in fact, included Wipro, TCS, as well as LTI, Mindtree. The heavyweights, they gained. And that was the reason that the Nifty could end higher. So Tata Motors, ITC, as well as L&T, all 3 of them did well. But there were select stocks that came in for some profit taking as well. CLSA, they had a bit of a cautious note on two-wheelers. Eicher Motors reacted to that, so that was lower in trade. Adani Enterprises as well did see some selling. And Cipla as well came in for some profit taking. From the broader markets, Balrampur Chini did see some selling. The street was sensing some bit of negative news on Balrampur Chini, Canfin Homes, as well as ACC after opening up higher. That stock ended lower. But Adani Group stocks continue to do well. Select them. You had Adani Total Gas, Adani Green. They did well. And HAL was back on the winners list. One thing's clear. If the market needs to trend higher, you need the Nifty Bank to participate. Today it didn't, but it appears the trend is pretty much up, both for the Nifty as well as the Nifty Bank. The Nifty, all targets on the 21,000 odd mark. For a bigger move, though, we'll have to see the Nifty Bank move closer to around that 50,000 odd mark.
Nifty Bank will need to move higher. Thanks very much, Nigel, for joining us. Gold prices edging higher as weaker than expected U.S. jobs data cemented expectations that the U.S. Fed policy tightening cycle has perhaps come to an end. A weaker dollar also supported prices, which had retreated marginally from record highs on the back of profit taking. Onto the cryptocurrency action, where Bitcoin's longest winning run continues, with the crypto crossing the $44,000 mark for the first time since April of last year. The largest digital asset has climbed for 6 days, rising nearly 16%. The surge has been attributed to optimism that a spot Bitcoin ETF will soon be approved in the US. Now, the 3-day meeting of the Reserve Bank's Monetary Policy Committee has begun, with the rate decision due to be announced on Friday, the 8th. All of CNBC-TV18 Citizens MPC members expect the central bank to maintain status quo on interest rates. They also expect the RBI to sound hawkish. But the panel was divided on RBI raising its growth forecast. Let's take a look.
The first question is, what will the Reserve Bank and the MPC do to interest rates on December 8th?
No change.
No change. Pause. Shaumya? Shaumya?
I think it will pause.
Okay. Sajid? Pause. Okay, I think you're on mute. I could lip read you.
Pause, yeah.
Sonal?
Pause.
Okay. Dr. Sen?
Pause.
Okay, this is an easy one. Withdrawal of accommodation is the stance. Will that be retained, Shamiran?
I think at least for this policy.
Okay. Soumya, what do you expect?
It will continue to retain withdrawal and accommodation given the current inflation objective.
Okay, same as Shamiran. Sajid?
Retain it.
Okay,
Retain the same stance.
Sonal?
Retain.
Oh, Dr. Sen?
I would move to neutral.
Yes, sir. You have held that view. I don't know how the Reserve Bank is going to manage that transition, though, as and when they do. Well, a quick third question. Will Reserve Bank change the growth forecast from the current 6.5? If yes, to what? Shaumya, you say that first.
I think the Reserve Bank is likely to revise it upwards to around 6.8% or so.
Okay. Oh, 6.8. Yours?
Maybe around 6.7.
Okay. Sonal?
Raise to 6.7.
Okay. Sajid?
Raise to 6.7.
Dr. Sen?
Retain 6.5.
Well, that's the Citizens MPC saying that there is likely to be a status quo on rates yet again by the RBI. We will, of course, be tracking all the action right here on CNBC-TV18, as we always do when the MPC delivers its monetary policy on the 8th. Now, it's the third day of the winter session of Parliament. The government has sought approval for a net additional spending of over 58,000 crore rupees this financial year. The supplementary demand for grants was tabled in the Lok Sabha today. Sapna standing by now with the details. Sapna, where is the government looking to raise the additional 58,000 crores, and what takes up a bulk of the supplementaries?
Well, the bulk of the cash supplementary, that is the number that needs to be watched, because that is what impacts the fisc. Ultimately, that's around 21,000 crores. And a big number is for the fertilizer subsidy, additional 13,350 odd crores in terms of cash outgo. Also 7,000 crores for the food subsidy. So both of these items occupy a major part of the net cash outgo. Importantly enough, out of the 58,000 crores of net cash outgo, 54,000 crores is additional revenue expenditure. So there are a lot of other smaller items as well. A lot of ministry departments have asked for money, and that has been, that has been given out. But in terms of the big items, these are two major chunks that we can see. Now, there was also talk about additional subsidy for LPG because there have been a series of announcements by the government. Also, there was an expectation that Manrega will get some additional allocation. So if you look at the other side of it, the technical supplementary, so-called technical supplementary, which means not a cash outgo, but through government savings or higher receipts, there is a massive outlay for both of them, around 9,000 odd crores for LPG subsidies and around 14,500 crores for Manrega. So these are two big items, but again, government savings are going to take care of that. Overall, if you look at the envelope, it's 1.29 lakh crore. And whatever goes out as cash outgo. Apart from that, whatever remains is going to be met through government savings. So there is also a lot of noise about how the tax buoyancy is extremely high this year, close to double of what they have budgeted. So there is an expectation that there will be some savings, potential savings, through which they can manage the expenditure. But the fact also remains it's an election year, and this 58,000 crores probably is just the beginning. We can expect some more some more cash outgo from the government side over the next month or 1.5 months. Or it's an election year, so let's wait for some of the announcements.
All right. Yes, we will certainly wait. Sapna, many thanks for joining us. Well, the Lok Sabha is also debating the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganisation Amendment Bill. The bill proposes to increase the legislative seats in J&K from 83 to 90. 7 of the seats are reserved for scheduled castes, 9 for scheduled tribes and 1 for people displaced from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Opposition parties questioned the government's J&K strategy, staging a walkout when Home Minister Amit Shah was speaking in the Lok Sabha.
कश्मीर में आप दावा करते हैं, गर्व से कहते हैं कि हम ग्रामीण चुनाव किए हैं, अर्बन चुनाव किए हैं, ये किए हैं, वो किए हैं। अगर इतना चुनाव कर दिए हैं तो विधानसभा चुनाव करने में दिक्कत क्या थी? एक के बाद एक आपको कानून लाने की क्या जरूरत थी? आप चाहते हैं कि आप जम्मू कश्मीर विधानसभा में आपका जीत निश्चित हो, इसलिए सारे ये कार्रवाई चल रहे हैं।
वो बिल 70 सालों से जिन्हों को अन्याय हुआ है, जो अपमानित हुए और जिनकी अनदेखी की गई है, वो सभी लोगों को न्याय दिलाने का बिल है, उनको अधिकार दिलाने का।
Well, that is the action in Parliament. A quick check of some of the corporate headlines this evening. Himadri Specialty Chemical hitting a 52-week high after its board approved the company's foray into lithium-ion battery component manufacturing. The company will set up a manufacturing facility either directly or via subsidiaries. The project cost has been estimated at 4,800 crore rupees over a period of 5 to 6 years. Two-wheeler giant Hero Motor has joined hands with the electric vehicle startup Ather Energy for an interoperable fast-charging network in India. Through this collaboration, EV users will be able to seamlessly use both VIDA and Ather grids across the country. Hero Motor said the combined network will cover 100 cities with over 1,900 fast-charging points. Remember, Hero Motor is an investor in Ather Energy. Sterling and Wilson Renewable Energy is likely to launch a qualified institutional placement to raise up to 1,500 crore rupees. Sources have told CNBC-TV18 the QIP is likely to be launched as early as next week. The proceeds from the issue will be used to repay the company's debt. The stock gained 5% on the back of that news. Chief Justice of India-led Supreme Court bench in a landmark verdict has held that an arbitration agreement can bind even on non-signatory parties. The court, while upholding the doctrine of group of companies, has said it was not necessary for a person or an entity to be a signatory to an arbitration agreement in order to be bound by it. Former CJI N.V. Ramana had referred the matter for reconsideration to a larger bench in May of 2022. Ashmit is standing by now to take us through the key contours of the judgment and the implications. Ashmit.
Well, a landmark judgment coming in from the top court. Landmark because of the nature of issue involved, not so much because of the parties or the amounts in question. Landmark for commercial arbitration here in India. The question that was here before the apex court was, when there are two parties that are fighting it out in an arbitration proceeding, can a non-signatory who's related to any one of these two parties also be roped in, can also be bound under the very same arbitration agreement? That question has been answered as a yes by the apex court. The Supreme Court unequivocally holding that parties under the Arbitration Act includes not only signatories to the arbitration agreement, but also non-signatories as well, that the courts and tribunals should be at liberty, should be free to look at the case of the matter, to look at the issue of the facts of the case, and then make a qualified decision on whether or not a non-signatory party can also be roped in. Here, the judgment even dwelled on the fact, on the commercial reality, that very often artificially certain parties are tried to be kept outside of the loop of the arbitration agreement, and that as an exercise that the courts and the tribunals should be able to look through. So the unequivocal answer of the apex court is yes, non-signatories can also be made material parties, can also be bound, can also be made liable under the arbitration agreements. And this is a hugely significant matter, as this will have a bearing on all arbitration proceedings going forward in deciding whether only the signatories, the parties in the agreement, will be the ones to face the liability of the arbitral award, or it could also be related parties or subsidiaries of the parties in question.
Ashwat, many thanks for joining us. Senior advocate Dushyant Dave has written an open letter to Chief Justice Chandrachud expressing anguish on sensitive cases being taken away from specific benches and judges. In his letter, Dave has claimed that benches hearing sensitive cases related to human rights, free speech were changed and assigned to other benches despite the availability of a senior judge. This, Dave alleged, was in disregard of the rules. He's highlighted that the Chief Justice has the power to upset the roster, to pick and choose and allocate any case to any judge of the Supreme Court. He's urged the Chief Justice to take corrective measures to maintain the stature of the Supreme Court. The GST rate rationalization process may start afresh after new members join the GST Council. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that the group of ministers on rate rationalization will meet after the government formation in the 5 states where polls were recently held. Timsy standing by now with more details. Timsy, so rate rationalization likely to be back on the agenda, but the previous GOM that had submitted its recommendations, that may no longer be taken forward.
Well, yes, government sources have told CNBC-TV18 that when it comes to the GST rate roadmap, rate rationalization is the key to the future of GST. The proposals suggested by the earlier GOM on rate rationalization will be looked at afresh as the council has reconstituted the GOM. The GOM on rate rationalization is now headed by the UP Finance Minister Suresh Khanna, and it is expected to meet after governments are formed in the 5 states where the polls were recently held. The proposals then made by the GOM, that is the earlier GOM, which was headed by Bomoy, that will be relooked. The interim report was submitted, that will be relooked. So the key will be how the new report looks like, what are the measures that are being looked at afresh. That's what sources indicated. On the other hand, growing GST collections have given a lot of confidence to the government. Sources shared that healthy GST collections are providing a cushion to the government to meet economic requirements. The growth in the GST collection is due to higher GDP, plateauing inflation, compliance improvement, and formalization of the economy. So let's see how the developments unfold at the upcoming GST Council meets, and especially how the rate rationalization GOM looks at the proposals yet again. Back to you.
All right, Timsy, many thanks for joining us. Now, 10 out of the 12 Bharatiya Janata Party MPs who won seats in the recently concluded state assembly elections have resigned from their membership of Parliament. These include Agriculture Minister Narendra Singh Tomar and Minister of State for Food Processing and Jal Shakti Prahlad Singh Patel. Both of them won their respective constituencies in the Madhya Pradesh assembly polls. Arun Sao, who's also the president of Chhattisgarh BJP, has resigned as MP. Rajavardhan Singh Rathore and Diya Kumari have also resigned after winning from their assembly seats in the Rajasthan polls. Well, we would head into a short break, but up next, schools and colleges remain shut in Chennai today and tomorrow as parts of the city remain waterlogged. Details when we return. Well, the latest from the war between Israel and Hamas. Military has intensified its attacks on Gaza by storming into the southern city of Khan Yunis, killing dozens of people. A UN top official has described their military offensive as apocalyptic. Gaza's humanitarian crisis has worsened. Doctors Without Borders has said that the Al-Aqsa hospital in Central Gaza is set to run out of fuel and medical supplies. As per Palestinian authorities, over 16,000 Palestinians have been killed since the war broke out on the 7th of October after Hamas's surprise attacks on Israel. Earlier this week, Israeli authorities made public the evidence of sexual violence against women and girls by Hamas militants. Israeli officials, US politicians and activists have criticized the UN for not doing enough to investigate the crimes. US President Biden referred to the alleged sexual violence as appalling and called on the world to condemn these incidents. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the country's forces will demilitarize Gaza after the war ends. Ukraine has said that Russia launched 48 attack drones overnight. The country's Air Force has said that its air defense system destroyed 41 of those drones before they reached their target. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky will join a video summit of the G7 as per the host, Japan. This comes after Zelensky skipped a virtual meeting with US senators yesterday. Back home, schools and colleges remain shut in Chennai today and tomorrow as parts of the city remain waterlogged. Foxconn, meanwhile, has resumed the manufacturing of iPhones. However, operations at auto factories and IT companies continue to be impacted. Take a look.
At least as far as what we are seeing on the ground in terms of the factories, production, etc., they were all affected for less than 36 hours. And most of them have now come back to their production. So I would say the impact to human beings and the quality of life has been quite severe, but the response has been very good. I don't think there will be a huge business impact because the 1.5 days loss can be made up, and especially since it was, I would call it, reasonably prepared for, and we were all ready, but we never expected this much of rain. But other than that, I think it was fine.
Well, that's the CII president. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is one of the 4 Indian women to make it to the Forbes list of 100 most powerful women in the world. Sitharaman was ranked 32 and took the highest spot among the Indian women. The other 3 include Roshni Nadar Malhotra, Soma Mandal and Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw. At the number 1 spot was European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen for the 2nd year in a row, followed by ECB President Christine Lagarde, US's Vice President Kamala Harris. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. Thanks very much for watching. Do stay tuned. The news continues. We're back in a moment with more.